When those closest to you betray your trust, it can completely change how you see the world. Paul was just 22 when he went through that harsh lesson. His fiancée ditched him for her ex-boyfriend a mere 3 months before their big day. She didn't just walk away, she took the engagement ring and all the money they'd been saving for the wedding. That left Paul feeling crushed, cynical, and wary of trusting anyone again, especially women. From that point on, he became hypercritical, ending any budding relationship before it even had the chance to grow. Over time, he gave up on love altogether, convinced he'd remain single forever. But then Sonia burst into his life like a bolt of lightning, laughter ringing out, freckles sprinkled across her glowing face. They worked in the same company, but on different floors, only occasionally sharing lunch with coworkers. People warned Sonia that Paul was your typical introverted programmer, fueled by endless coffee. She'd pictured some bespectacled guy in a worn-out sweater with unkempt hair. Imagine her surprise when she met a guy with curly brown locks and adorable dimples that lit up his cheeks. Sonia was instantly hooked and didn't hide it one bit. Their connection blossomed fast, catching Paul completely off guard. Before he knew it, 3 years had slipped by, and they were married. And with her, Paul found hope again, a renewed faith in the kindness of the world. A year after their wedding, Sonia shared the news about her situation. Paul, who was about to become a father, was over the moon with happiness. Fast forward 10 years. Their son was already in school, but there was something awkward between them. It seemed that one of them no longer belonged to the other. And yet, stubborn pride forced them to pretend that everything was fine. Such a distance is not unusual after many years of living together. A sudden fading of passion when once ardent vows, for better or for worse, seem far away. They grew up as strangers, living under the same roof, burdened with housework and passing years. Paul was particularly concerned about the age difference. When he was almost 30 and she was 20, it didn't seem like much. Now that he had gray streaks and she, at 30, still had a young, mischievous look, it bothered him. One morning, over their usual breakfast, Sonia broke the silence. "What do you want to do for your anniversary?" she asked. Paul shrugged, not really in the mood. "Haven't thought about it. Maybe just a dinner out." His midlife crisis was hitting hard. Celebrations didn't seem to matter anymore. Sonia gave him a knowing smile. "Nicholas suggested we throw you a surprise party. We'll handle everything. You just show up." There were still 6 months to go before the big day, and Paul went along with his friend's plan without much fuss. But as the birthday crept closer, Sonia started staying late at the office, using the party prep as a handy excuse. Her phone would buzz constantly with messages from someone. And Paul, haunted by his past heartbreak, couldn't help but wonder if she was hiding someone else from him. He kept these suspicions to himself, not wanting to hurt her or stir up trouble. But the nagging doubts dragged him down. That old wound from the runaway bride saga felt like an invisible wall between him and trust. Sonia didn't even realize how things slipped out of her control. Nicholas, Paul's friend, had always been around, but she never thought of him in any romantic way. Nicholas was pretty average, nothing flashy, and at 43, still single. He'd joke about not really knowing how many kids he'd somehow fathered around the world. A running gag during their weekend get-togethers where booze flowed freely. But as they dove into party plans, Sonia and Nicholas started to see each other differently. Suddenly, he wasn't just Paul's friend. He was mature, steady, even kind of impressive. She found out he was well-read, sharp, and their talks about art and books would stretch on so long, they sometimes forgot why they'd met in the first place. Their first real connection happened in a car ride, coffees in hand, diving into a heated debate about the latest award-nominated films. Sonia got so wrapped up in their easy banter that the real world began to blur, feeling almost like a daydream. But every time she came home afterward, a heavy wave of guilt crashed over her. She tried hard to cover it up, to be the wife Paul expected. He saw the shift in her, but wasn't willing, or maybe wasn't ready, to dig into what was really going on. Everything fell apart on Paul's 40th birthday. A surprise party was waiting for him. Friends, co-workers, all packed into a rented apartment. The lights went out, everyone slipping quietly into their spots. Sonia stood close to Nicholas, who casually brushed her hand now and then. "Stop it, you'll give us away," she whispered, desperate not to ruin Paul's night. Nicholas just grinned. "I can't just stand here, doing nothing." Then Paul walked in. Lights flipped on, party blowers blasted, and cheers filled the room. He wasn't sure if he felt happy. Maybe he just wore a mask, a smile stretched wide enough to keep disappointment at bay. The last thing he wanted was to hurt those who cared about him. Right in the middle of the celebration, Nicholas wobbled over to Paul, clearly hammered and barely steady on his feet. All night, Sonia had been watching Nicholas like a hawk, making sure he didn't spill any secrets in front of her husband. But suddenly, she vanished, and the worst happened. Slurring, smelling of booze, Nicholas blurted out the truth, telling Paul about his intimate moments with Sonia, even calling it love. Paul's face went blank as he stared at the drunken mess. Shaking it off, he stumbled toward the window, spotting his pack of cigarettes sitting there like a cruel reminder. A mix of disgust, pain, and rage buoyed inside him. Like a wild animal, he lunged at Nicholas, pounding him until others dragged them apart. The crowd gawked in shock, silently begging for an explanation from either man. Then they spotted Sonia, where she should have been by Paul's side. She sat crying next to Nicholas. The friends who knew Paul's cast, the story of the runaway bride, were stunned beyond words. And Paul? He was shattered in ways he'd never known. Without a second thought, he decided to file for divorce. He couldn't stand sharing space with Sonia any longer. By Monday morning, he barred her from their home, leaving her things piled up outside in shopping bags. Deep down, he knew it was harsh, especially with their child involved. Knowing he'd have to explain it all one day. But at that moment, sharing a roof with Sonia was something he simply couldn't bear. Just the thought of it made Paul feel physically ill. Even before the divorce papers were signed, Sonia had already packed up and moved in with Nicholas. She tried to persuade their son to come along, but to her surprise, the boy stood firm, choosing to stay with his dad. Paul felt a deep sense of gratitude for that. Facing yet another betrayal alone would have been unbearable. His son's quiet loyalty was the one thing that kept his hope from completely fading away. It wasn't long before trouble surfaced. Just a month after moving in, Sonia and Nicholas had their first real fight. That's when she finally understood why Nicholas had never tied the knot before. In the heat of the argument, he morphed into a ruthless tyrant, hurling threats, even resorting to physical intimidation in an effort to control her. Fear settled in deep. Sonia knew then she'd made a terrible mistake, one she couldn't undo by going back to her once loving husband. Now, she was left to confront the growing storm on her own, clinging to what little sanity she had left.